Jacob planted his feet at the very edge of the ditch and threw his whole body against the black Bentley. His tattered brown coat flapped in the wind. Mud smeared his sleeves. His old, dirty bag swung from his shoulder as both hands pressed hard on the hot bonnet. The car's front had already slipped past the crumbling shoulder of the road. The wheels spun and screamed. The nose dipped toward the dark water below. "Stop!" someone shouted. People froze on the Lagos roadside. Some placed both hands on their heads, some covered their mouths. The sun was bright. The ditch was deep. It looked like the end. Jacob locked his shaking knees and pushed back with everything he had. His arms burned. His chest screamed. For a moment, time stood still, only the sound of the engine, the smell of smoke, and a homeless man's heartbeat counting down. The car stopped. Jacob didn't. The earth under his heel gave way. He slipped, tumbled, and vanished into the ditch with a splash. Everything went quiet. Earlier that afternoon, Jacob stood under the bridge where he often slept. He was 40, dark-skinned, tall, with overgrown, tangled hair and an unkempt beard. The brown coat he wore was old and stained from many rains. The city cars rushed above, but under the bridge it was different. Cool shade, dust, and the smell of damp earth. He rubbed his empty stomach. He thought about bread. He thought about water. He thought about nothing. He looked at the old bag on his shoulder. Inside was a thin cloth, a cracked Bible he found, and one small bottle. That was all he had. He took a deep breath and watched the road. Lagos never stops. Danfoss honked. Okadas zigzagged. Vendors shouted. Life moved. He stood still. Then he heard it, the quick, sharp gasp of a driver, the squeal of tires, and the thud of a wheel hitting a hidden hole. A sleek black Bentley swerved to avoid a pothole that almost jumped out of nowhere. The car jolted, fishtailed, and slid toward the ditch like a heavy stone on sand. Jacob didn't think. He ran. His feet beat a drum on the hot road. Thud, thud, thud. The driver's eyes were wide with fear. For a heartbeat, Jacob saw a face behind the glass, young, strong, and shocked. He reached the front of the Bentley and threw his body in front of it. He pressed both hands on the bonnet, teeth clenched. The car was still moving. The ditch was right there. He dug his heels into the ground. "Hold on!" a man yelled. Jacob pushed with his full weight. He closed his eyes. He thought, if this is the last thing I do, let it be this. The car shuddered and stopped. The crowd gasped, and then the ground let go. Jacob fell backward and disappeared into the ditch. The driver's door flew open. A woman in a navy dress with a sharp, simple cut staggered out, breathless and shaking. Her hair was tied back. A gold bracelet flashed in the sun. Her name was Sandra Uche, but everyone called her Sandra. She was the billionaire CEO of Andertech, one of the biggest tech companies in Africa. Even now, dust on her heels, she looked like a leader, strong, focused, and terrified. "Please, help him," she cried, pointing into the ditch. "I beg you, somebody help." People had gathered. Some stood with both hands on their heads. Some couldn't move, but her voice broke the freeze like thunder. 4 young men jumped in without thinking. They waded through the brown water and lifted Jacob's heavy, limp body. His head bled from a cut. His coat dripped. His eyes were closed. "Bring him here!" Sandra shouted. She ran to the back door of the Bentley and flung it open. "Lay him here gently, please." They eased Jacob into the back seat. One of the young men tore his own shirt to press on the wound at Jacob's temple. Sandra slid behind the wheel, hands shaking, heart pounding. "Thank you," she said, looking each of them in the eyes. "God bless you. I will not forget." She slammed the door, started the engine, and sped away. "Hold on, please hold on," she whispered as she drove. "Don't die. Not after you saved me." Traffic parted when they saw the way she drove. She headed straight to Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Her phone buzzed again and again, meetings, investors, countless reminders. She ignored them all and pressed the horn. "Emergency, head injury," she shouted at the gate. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. They slid Jacob onto it and ran inside. A doctor met them at the doors of the emergency ward, eyes sharp, voice steady. "What happened?" he asked. "He stopped my car from falling into a ditch," Sandra said, breathless. "He hit his head. He was underwater." Please, please. They wheeled Jacob into a room. Machines beeped. The doctor checked his pulse, his eyes, his breathing. He ordered a scan at once. Minutes felt like hours. The scan returned. The chief medical doctor, a calm man with kind eyes, joined them. His condition is critical, he said. He hit his head hard. Blood has leaked close to part of the brain. He needs urgent surgery. Now. Sandra didn't blink. Do it, she said. Whatever you need. I will pay. Please, save him. They took Jacob into the theater. The doors swung shut. Sandra stood alone in the bright hallway. The floor was white, the air smelled of clean soap, and the clock on the wall ticked like a hammer. She pressed her palms together and bowed her head. God, please, she whispered. Please. Time crawled. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere else, someone cried. Nurses walked by with quiet feet. A cleaner mopped slowly. A TV in the waiting area showed the news. Traffic, weather, something about stocks. It felt wrong that the world could keep moving right now. Sandra's phone buzzed again. Board call in 20 minutes. Investor deck ready? Media wants comment on Anditech's new app. She put the phone face down. Not today. After what felt like forever, the theater doors opened. The chief medical doctor stepped out, tired but hopeful. The surgery was successful, he said. We stopped the bleeding and cleaned the wound. He is still critical, but the signs are good. The next 24 hours are important. Sandra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank you, she said, eyes wet. Thank you so much. They moved Jacob to a quiet room, bandages wrapped around his head. A monitor blinked soft lights. The room hummed. Evening slipped into night. The city outside glowed. Inside, time slowed again. Sandra stayed. A nurse brought her a chair. She sat beside Jacob's bed, hands folded, eyes on his face. She thought about the ditch. She thought about his hands on the car, his feet at the edge, the way he fell. She thought about how a stranger gave up his own life to save hers. Please live, she whispered. Let me thank you. Let me help you. She closed her eyes but did not sleep. She prayed in small, quiet words. She stood to stretch and sat again. At midnight, she went home for a quick shower and came back with fresh clothes and water. She did not leave him alone for long. At dawn, pale light touched the window. Birds began to sing outside. The monitor still blinked. The air felt new, thin, hopeful. Sandra leaned close. Good morning, she said softly. Not sure why. Jacob's eyelids fluttered. She held her breath. His fingers moved. His mouth trembled. Slowly, very slowly, his eyes opened dark, confused, and alive. She stood at once. Can you hear me? She asked. You're safe. You're in the hospital. Jacob looked at the ceiling, then turned his head a little. He saw her face and frowned, like he was searching inside his mind for a word he had lost. He swallowed. Where am I? His voice was weak and rough. You're at Lurth, Sandra said gently. You had an accident. You saved my life. He blinked. He looked at her one more time, longer now. A little light came into his eyes. I know you, he whispered. You're, Sandra, you're the billionaire CEO of Anditech. Sandra gasped. She smiled and nodded fast. Yes, I am. But please don't talk too much. You need to rest. The doctor came in, surprised to see Jacob awake. This is earlier than we expected, he said, checking the monitors. You are strong, but we must be careful. Sandra touched Jacob's hand. Thank you for saving me, she said, voice shaking. I will never forget. Jacob stared at her hand, then at the bandage on his head. He tried to sit up. Pain flashed across his face. He winced and sank back. It's okay, Sandra said. Don't push. Just breathe. He took a small breath. My name. He paused. His eyes darted, scared. He looked around the room like a child in a strange place. I can't. He closed his eyes tight, trying to pull a memory from a dark room. I can't remember. I can't remember my name. I can't remember who I am. The smile fell from Sandra's face. The doctor's pen stilled over the chart. The monitor kept its soft, steady blink. Jacob opened his eyes again. They were full now. Not with anger, not with fear, but with a quiet, deep emptiness. "Who am I?" he whispered. "Please. Who am I?" The monitor beeped faster. A nurse hurried in. The doctor leaned over the bed, eyes sharp, voice suddenly firm. "Stay calm," he said. "Don't force it. Breathe slowly." Sandra reached for Jacob's hand and held it with both of hers. "You're safe," she said. "You are safe with me." He looked at her, searching for a lifeline he couldn't name. The beeping rose another notch. The doctor glanced at the screen. "Something's shifting," he said. "Call imaging." Now. The door swung wider. Footsteps rushed in the hall. Jacob's grip tightened around Sandra's fingers. His lips parted like he was about to speak a name, a place, a warning, but no words came. And the monitor alarm began to cry. The sound of the alarm cut through the hospital room like a blade. Nurses rushed in. The doctor barked orders. One nurse adjusted the oxygen line, another checked the IV. The monitor still screamed, red lights flashing. Sandra's heart pounded. She leaned closer, clutching Jacob's hand. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." Jacob's lips trembled, his eyes fluttered. He tried to speak, but only managed a broken whisper. Then, as quickly as it began, the monitor steadied again. The beeping slowed. The alarm went silent. The doctor exhaled, relief flooding his face. "Stabilized," he said, wiping his forehead. "But he must rest. No more pressure. His memory will return or it won't. We cannot force it." Sandra's hand shook as she stroked Jacob's rough palm. His eyes opened faintly, meeting hers. "I don't know who I am," he said softly, the weight of those words heavy in the quiet room. Sandra blinked back tears. "Then I will know you until you remember," she whispered. That evening, the hospital was quiet. Visitors had gone. Lights glowed softly in the hallway. Sandra sat in the chair by Jacob's bed, still in her navy dress, her hair slightly loose now. She hadn't left his side except to pace the corridor, phone in hand. Her board members had called 10 times. She ignored every one. Her assistant had texted, "Madam, the investors are waiting for you." She replied with 2 words, "Not today." This stranger, the homeless man who had saved her life, was her only focus. When Jacob stirred, she leaned forward. "Can you tell me anything at all? A name, a place, even a street?" He closed his eyes, trying hard. Images flickered and vanished in the fog of his mind. A room, a computer screen, a woman's laugh, a little boy's face. Then darkness. "I see shadows," he whispered. "But they slip away." Sandra reached out, laying her hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. Don't force it. You're safe here." The next morning, the chief doctor returned. "He is strong. He may be discharged in a few days if his vitals stay stable," he told Sandra. Sandra looked at Jacob, still pale but breathing on his own. "He has nowhere to go," she said. "No family he remembers. No home." The doctor hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Then he must go with you. You may be the only person he trusts now." Sandra agreed without hesitation. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled into the long driveway of Sandra's mansion in Victoria Island. It was sleek, modern, glass shining in the Lagos sun. The security guards opened the gates. Inside, Jacob sat stiffly in the back seat, wearing simple clothes Sandra had bought for him. A clean shirt, dark trousers, and shoes that fit. His bandaged head rested against the glass. His eyes widened as he looked at the mansion. A sprawling estate with tall white walls, fountains, and green lawns. "This is your home?" he asked softly. Sandra smiled. "For now, it's yours too." The guards helped him out. Sandra guided him inside. The marble floors gleamed, the chandeliers sparkled. The air smelled of polish and jasmine. Jacob froze. "I don't belong here," he murmured. Sandra looked at him firmly. "You saved my life. You belong here more than anyone." That night, Sandra had dinner set in the grand dining room. The long table stretched under golden lights. She sat at the head. Jacob sat at her side, awkward, unsure of which fork to use. She noticed his hesitation and gently pushed the cutlery aside. "Eat with your hands if you like," she said warmly. "This is not about manners. This is about being alive." He smiled faintly, and for the first time since the accident, he relaxed. but halfway through the meal, his fork clattered onto the plate. His hand froze. His eyes widened. Sandra leaned in. "What is it?" He shut his eyes tight, a wave of memory hitting him like a storm. He gasped and clutched his head. I think I remember." "My name," he whispered, voice shaking. Sandra's heart raced. "Tell me." He opened his eyes, and tears brimmed in them. "My name is Jacob Benjamin," he said slowly, as if testing the truth of it. I was a homeless man under the bridge, and that day, I saw your car, about to crash. I ran. I stood in front of it. That was the last thing I remember before I fell." Sandra pressed her hand over her mouth, stunned. "You remember?" Jacob nodded weakly, but his face darkened, shadows flickering in his eyes. "There's more," he said, his voice breaking. "Before the bridge, before I lost everything." Sandra leaned closer, her eyes locked on his. "What happened to you, Jacob?" Jacob swallowed hard, his hands trembling as old wounds reopened in his mind. "I was a software engineer once, but they destroyed me." The room went silent. The chandelier above hummed. Sandra's fork lay untouched on her plate. Jacob's story was about to pour out, one that would shatter everything she thought she knew about the stranger in her mansion. And that's when the lights flickered, the generator hummed, but the power cut lasted a moment too long. Both turned toward the window, where a shadow lingered at the gates. Someone was watching. The shadow at the gate disappeared as quickly as it came. But the moment lingered in Sandra's mind like smoke in a room. She stood from the dining table and walked toward the balcony. The night air smelled of rain. The Lagos skyline sparkled in the distance. The gate stood tall, guarded, but she knew what she saw. Jacob followed slowly, his hand brushing against the bandage on his head. "What is it?" he asked, voice still weak but curious. Sandra forced a smile. "Nothing, just my imagination." But her heart knew better. She turned back to him. "You were saying that they destroyed you. Tell me, Jacob. Tell me everything." Jacob sat down again, the chandelier's soft light casting shadows across his tired face. His hands trembled as he clasped them on the table. He took a deep breath, and the story began. "I was once a lead software engineer," he said slowly, as if pulling memories out of a locked chest. "I worked for a foreign tech company. I was their rising star. Projects came alive under my fingers. They trusted me." Sandra leaned forward, eyes fixed on him. "But jealousy," Jacob whispered, his voice cracking. "Jealousy is poison. Some of my colleagues envied me. They set me up. A project we worked on, a code worth millions, was leaked. And somehow it was traced to my system. They claimed I sold it to competitors." Sandra gasped. "But you didn't." "I didn't." Jacob's voice rose, then broke. "But no one believed me. They showed evidence they planted. I was arrested. My name was dragged in the mud. I was sentenced. 2 years in prison, 2 years of shame." Sandra's throat tightened. She reached for his hand, his fingers shook as he continued. "When I came out, I had nothing left. My job was gone. My reputation was gone. And the final blow," his eyes watered. "My wife, Adana, left me. She took our son, Jerry. She left a letter and a DNA test. Jerry, the boy I raised for 5 years, was not my child." Sandra's hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. Jacob lowered his head. "That broke me. I had no parents, no family. I was the only child. Everything I loved was gone. I wandered until the underbridge became my home. And that is where you found me." The room went silent. Sandra's tears spilled freely now. She stood and walked around the table, kneeling beside him. She held his face in her hands. "You lost everything," she whispered. "But Jacob, you gave me my life. And I promise you, you will not live in shadows anymore." Jacob's lips trembled. He wanted to believe. Sandra sat back, her own heart heavy with memories. "Do you know why I understand you?" she asked softly. "Because I too was broken once." Jacob looked at her, surprised. "After my father, Chief Donald Uche, died," Sandra began, "I trusted the wrong man. Johnson, my father's friend, my husband, he ran away with almost everything I inherited. 6 years of marriage, and he left me with nothing but shame. He was older, cunning, and he vanished without trace. People mocked me. They said I was finished. Her eyes hardened. But I rose. I built Anditech from scratch. With sweat, with pain. And today, I stand stronger. Jacob listened, his heart stirring. For the first time, he felt a flicker of strength within himself. You see? Sandra said, gripping his hand. We are not victims. We are survivors. Jacob nodded slowly, hope glimmering in his tired eyes. The next day, Sandra drove him to Anditech's headquarters in Victoria Island. The building rose tall, glass gleaming in the sun. Employees in smart suits moved in and out, carrying laptops, speaking into phones. Inside, Sandra led him past reception. Heads turned, whispers spread. Who was this man beside their powerful CEO? This is Jacob Benjamin, Sandra announced to her management team. He is joining us. He is family. The staff clapped politely, but Jacob felt the weight of their eyes. Still, when he sat at a desk again, fingers brushing a keyboard, something inside him awakened. The machine welcomed him. His hands remembered what his mind almost forgot. Code flowed. Systems obeyed. For the first time in years, Jacob felt alive. By evening, Sandra passed by his workstation. She saw the fire in his eyes. Welcome back, Jacob, she said warmly. And in that moment, Jacob realized he had been given a second chance. But peace is never without danger. That night, as Sandra and Jacob sat on the mansion's balcony, overlooking the glittering city, Jacob laughed for the first time. She smiled, sipping her wine, their hands brushing. But down by the gates, unseen by both, a man in a dark jacket leaned against the wall. His eyes followed them with venom. His lips curled in a bitter smile. It was Johnson Sandra's estranged husband, and he had returned. The Lagos night was quiet, but danger often walks quietly. Johnson stood under the shadows of the high gates, his eyes burning with hatred. The once polished man had aged, but his bitterness made him look even sharper. His suit was wrinkled, his face lean, and his lips curled in a smirk as he watched Jacob and Sandra laughing together on the balcony. So this is the man who took my place, he muttered under his breath. His fists clenched. Sandra, you think you can move on without me? Never. He slipped back into the darkness before the guards noticed. Inside, Sandra leaned against the balcony railing, the Lagos skyline glowing behind her. Jacob sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on the table. It feels strange, Jacob said softly, to laugh again. Sandra smiled. Then laugh more. You've carried sorrow too long. He turned to her, his eyes lingering. Sandra, I don't know how to thank you. You've given me more than I thought I deserved. Her heart skipped. For a moment, the city lights seemed to dim around them. But before she could reply, her phone buzzed. A board message. An emergency call. She silenced it. Tonight wasn't about business. Tonight was about life. The following day, Jacob proved himself at Anditech. He joined the engineers on a project that had stalled for weeks. Within hours, his sharp mind pieced solutions together, code lines turned into flowing systems. By evening, the team stared in awe. This man is a genius, one whispered. Sandra walked in just as Jacob solved a critical bug. Her eyes sparkled with pride. I knew it, she said. You were born for this. But in the corner of the lobby, unseen by many, a familiar figure stood in disguise, a cap pulled low, glasses hiding his face. Johnson was watching, his jaw tightened, as he listened to whispers about Jacob's brilliance. They clap for him now? Johnson muttered, his voice dripping with poison. They will not clap for long. That night, Sandra hosted a quiet dinner at her mansion to celebrate Jacob's return to life. Only a few close staff attended. Jacob looked different, now clean, shaved, dressed in a crisp white shirt Sandra had chosen for him. His shoulders sat straighter, his eyes brighter. But outside the gates, a van waited. 4 rough-looking men sat inside. Johnson leaned forward from the shadows, giving orders. Tonight, he said coldly, we take him. He thinks he can steal Sandra from me. No, I was her husband. That makes her mine. And no one takes what's mine. The men nodded. The celebration ended late. Guests left. The mansion grew quiet. Jacob stepped out onto the driveway, breathing in the night air. The guards were changing shifts. For one brief moment, the gates weren't as tightly watched. That was when the van pulled forward. Jacob Benjamin? A voice shouted. He turned, confused. Yes. Before he could finish, two men jumped out. They grabbed him, rough and fast. He fought, but his strength was still weak from recovery. A cloth pressed over his mouth. His world spun. Sandra's voice rang out from the doorway. Jacob! But by the time she ran, the van door slammed shut. Tires screeched. The vehicle sped into the night. Stop them! Sandra screamed, her voice breaking. The guards chased, but the van vanished into Lagos traffic. Sandra fell to her knees, her hands trembling. Tears filled her eyes. They've taken him, she whispered. No, not again. Inside the van, Jacob struggled, wrists bound. Johnson sat across from him, his smile twisted. So you're the hero, eh? Johnson sneered. The man who saved her, the man who now sits in my seat. Tell me, Jacob, did you really think Sandra was yours? Jacob's chest rose and fell in rage. Who are you? Johnson leaned close, his face inches away. I am Johnson Uche, Sandra's husband, the man who built her world before she forgot me. And now, you will pay for touching what belongs to me. Jacob's heart froze. Husband? This was the man who betrayed her? The van rattled down the expressway. Jacob's mind raced. His head still ached from his injury, but his spirit flared with fire. You can bind my hands, Jacob said coldly, but you cannot bind the truth. Sandra is not yours. She is stronger than you ever were. Johnson's smile darkened. We'll see. By the time I'm done, she'll come crawling back. Back at the mansion, Sandra's entire staff searched frantically. She called the police, her voice shaking. Find him. Please, find him. He saved my life. Don't let him die because of me. The officers promised to act, but Sandra knew Lagos justice was slow. Her heart burned with guilt. She stood on her balcony, staring into the night, whispering a prayer. God, don't let him be broken again. In a hidden warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Jacob was tied to a chair. The floor smelled of oil and rust. Johnson paced in front of him. You will stay here, Johnson said, until Sandra comes for you. Then she will choose. Me or you. And if she chooses you, he smirked, you will never leave this place alive. Jacob lifted his chin, defiant even in chains. Sandra will never bow to you. She's not the same woman you betrayed. Johnson's eyes narrowed. We'll see. He turned and walked out, locking the door. The room fell silent except for Jacob's ragged breath. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, I survived betrayal. I survived prison. I will survive this too. But in the darkness, a chilling thought crept into his mind. What if Sandra was forced to choose between love and death? And outside the warehouse, Johnson lit a cigarette, the smoke curling into the night. He dialed his phone and whispered into it, call her. Tell her if she wants to see him alive, she'll come alone. The phone rang in Sandra's mansion at dawn. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. A rough voice on the other end said, if you want your man alive, come to the old warehouse by the docks. Come alone. Midnight. Or you'll never see him again. The line went dead. Sandra gripped the phone so tightly, her knuckles whitened. Tears welled in her eyes, but behind them burned fire. She knew that voice didn't belong to a common criminal. She knew who was behind this. Johnson, she whispered. At the warehouse, Jacob sat bound to a chair. The air was thick with oil fumes, the walls cold and damp. His wrists were raw from the rope, but his spirit hadn't broken. He stared at the locked door, thinking of Sandra. He remembered her words from the balcony. We are not victims. We are survivors. He repeated it in his mind, over and over, like a shield. That evening, Sandra made her choice. She dressed simply dark jeans. A jacket, no jewelry. Her driver begged her not to go alone. Her assistant cried, but Sandra silenced them all. This is my fight, she said firmly, and I will not let Johnson destroy what I've just begun to build with Jacob. She slipped into her black SUV and drove through Lagos streets as the city lights flickered on. The traffic thinned as she approached the docks. Midnight. The warehouse loomed, shadows stretching under the dim light of the street lamps. She stepped out, her heels crunching on gravel. The air was heavy, thick with danger. Johnson, she called, her voice strong, though her heart raced. I'm here, The warehouse door screeched open. Johnson stepped out, smirking. Two of his men flanked him. "Well, well," Johnson said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "The Queen herself. Did you miss me, Sandra?" Sandra's jaw tightened. "Where is Jacob?" Johnson snapped his fingers. Two men dragged Jacob out, still bound, face bruised but defiant. His eyes lit up when he saw Sandra. "Don't come closer," Jacob shouted. "It's a trap." Sandra's chest ached at the sight of him, but her eyes stayed locked on Johnson. "Let him go. This is between you and me." Johnson laughed coldly. "Oh, Sandra. Always so proud. Always pretending you're stronger without me. But look at you still running after men to save you." Sandra's voice cut like steel. "No, Johnson. I'm here to end this. You don't own me. You never did." Jacob struggled against the ropes. His voice cracked. "Sandra, don't, he's dangerous." Johnson pulled a pistol from his jacket. The metallic click echoed in the night. He aimed it at Jacob's chest. "You see?" Johnson sneered. "He's the one standing between us. When he's gone, you'll have no choice but to come back to me." Sandra's breath caught, but her gaze never wavered. She stepped closer. "If you pull that trigger, you'll lose everything. Not just me. Your freedom. Your power. Everything. The police are already watching. You won't get away this time." Johnson's smirk faltered for a moment. His eyes flickered with doubt, and that was when sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed outside the warehouse. Police vehicles screeched to a halt. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. "Drop the gun, Johnson." A commanding voice thundered. Johnson froze. Sweat formed on his forehead. He turned back to Sandra, rage filling his face. "You called them?" Sandra's voice was calm, sharp. "No, Johnson. You called them the day you betrayed me." Chaos erupted. The officers stormed in. Johnson's men tried to flee but were quickly subdued. Johnson himself lunged, grabbing Sandra by the arm, shoving the gun toward her head. "If I'm going down," he growled, "I'm taking her with me." "No!" Jacob roared, his chair crashing to the floor as he forced his body forward. The ropes cut his skin, but with one desperate twist, he broke free. He launched himself at Johnson, knocking the gun aside. The weapon clattered to the floor. A shot fired into the air. Police surged forward, wrestling Johnson to the ground. His screams echoed through the warehouse. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Jacob collapsed against the floor, gasping, blood trickling from his wrists. Sandra rushed to him, cradling his face in her hands. "Jacob," she whispered, tears streaming. "You're safe now. You're safe." He looked at her, his eyes soft despite the pain. "I told you. I'd survive this too." Sandra laughed through her tears, holding him tightly. Days later, the news spread across Nigeria. Johnson Uche, former husband of Anditech CEO, arrested for abduction, theft, and fraud. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The stolen assets were returned to Sandra. Justice had come at last, and Jacob, no longer homeless, no longer forgotten, stood tall beside Sandra. At Anditech, he was no longer just a survivor. He became one of their lead engineers, his brilliance restoring not only the company's projects, but also his own dignity. Sandra never left his side. From business meetings to quiet dinners overlooking the Lagos skyline, their bond grew stronger. One evening, on the balcony where it all began, Jacob knelt before her, a small velvet box in his trembling hands. "Sandra," he whispered, eyes glistening. "I was once a man who lost everything, but with you, I found life again. Will you marry me?" Sandra's tears fell freely as she nodded. "Yes, Jacob, 1,000 times yes." The city lights shone brighter that night, as if Lagos itself rejoiced. A week later, their wedding filled the city with awe. Powerful men and women attended, but none could match the joy in Sandra's eyes or the strength in Jacob's heart. And a year after, they were blessed with a son, a boy they named Jerry. This time, Jerry was no reminder of betrayal. He was a symbol of hope, of new beginnings, of a love born from sacrifice. The homeless man who once stood at the edge of a ditch, willing to give up his life, had found not just survival, he had found family, love, and destiny. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.